Thank you for tuning in and welcome back, team. In today's episode of Real Estate Advice, you'll learn about buying a house without a real estate agent, myth versus fact. My name is Andrew Finney, your real estate geek. If you need help finding a top agent where you live, or if you simply want to drop me a line to say hello, my contact info is below. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel now and like this video. Thank you. Okay, team, so let's talk about this. Why would I be making a video today as a trusted real estate advisor teaching you myth versus fact when buying a house without a real estate agent, and actually the process one would want to take if they decided to proceed with buying a house without a real estate agent? It's simple. There's always going to be a portion of you that are watching this video right now that might be wanting or be curious about if you're going to get a better deal on a house if you work with an attorney or if you work directly with the seller opposed to working with a real estate agent. So I'm going to give you 8 points and distinguish myth versus fact so that you can so that you'll know and you'll have all the information available of what you're getting yourself into, and also debunking myth and supporting the facts, okay? And then if you still choose to go into purchasing a home without a real estate agent, then I'll touch on the process that you'd want to take just in caring about you and caring about making sure that you don't get hurt in the real estate process, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The first one is you're not allowed to buy a home without an agent. Well, obviously that's a big old myth. Otherwise I wouldn't be making this video today, and it would be an extremely short video. So the second one is if you work without an agent, you can only buy for sale by owner properties. Again, this is going to be a myth. If you're wanting to purchase a property with or without an agent, all of the property types are open to you, from for sale by owners on to what's listed on the multiple listing service. In other words, what you see on like Zillow, real estate agent websites, all of those homes you could still write an offer on. So to point two, if you work without an agent, you can only buy for sale by owner properties is a myth. The third thing is if you buy without an agent, the seller's agent will just keep the extra commission. Yes, no, and this is a little bit tricky, and here's why. Because whenever a listing agent takes a listing and agrees to work with a seller, some listing agents around the country may decide to do what's called a variable commission rate. In the variable commission rate, there may be an agreement between that listing agent and the seller that if they gain representation of both parties, being a buyer and obviously representing the seller, then they might be able to keep all of the commission. So let's say it was like maybe a 6 or 7% commission, just as a fictitious example in this case. Let's call it like a 7% commission. Then the agent could keep all of that, right? Maybe if they have a variable commission, maybe they only get to keep 6, or maybe only get to keep 5.5. Maybe there was a reduction in the total amount of commission the agent is able to keep if they have representation of both parties, depending on what that listing agent and the seller agreed upon prior to going on the market together. So that one's a little bit tricky. What I do want you to think about though on this is sometimes people contact me, and it's always amazing. Sometimes people contact me about a property that they see on Zillow or something, or they've seen online. And when they do that, they are looking for the listing agent. And when I ask them what's significant about that to them, they're like, well, I want to get the best deal possible, so I want to work directly with the listing agent. I'm like, huh. I'm a little bit confused because the listing agent represents the seller's best interest before anybody's. So how's it going to work for you if if a listing agent represents the seller's best interest, and without your own buyer's agent representing your best interest? Then if you're working with a listing agent, who's representing your best interest? And how is a listing agent going to represent you as a buyer and be your buyer's agent, and the seller and be their listing agent and represent both of your best interests? Huh, it's a little bit difficult. That's why that's actually called dual agency, and that's why in some states that's actually an illegal practice. So it depends on what state you're in, whether that works. But back to point 3, if you buy without an agent, the seller's agent will just keep the extra commission. Yes and no, depending on the terms of the listing contract. So the fourth thing is, even if you don't use an agent, you'll still need an attorney. That's an absolute fact. If you're not using a real estate agent, there are so many contracts, so many legalities, so much stuff to know when purchasing a home that you will need to have an attorney. And the attorney will also charge a commission of either the sales price, or perhaps they just have a flat fee service and you're going to do a lot of legwork, but they're going to take care of the legal stuff as far as moving that transaction forward. Just be prepared to pay the attorney directly in that case, okay? The fifth thing is sellers won't take you seriously if you don't use an agent. That depends on the seller, and we can't assume the thought process or assume to know or assume ownership of anyone else's thought process out there. It really just depends. In a lot of cases, it seems like there is a pretty big consensus that a lot of sellers would be hesitant or resistant to accept an offer from a buyer that's not being represented by either an attorney or a real estate agent, and here's why. There again goes back to so many legalities, so many contracts, so many deadlines and timelines that go into a real estate transaction itself, and so much that has to be done, that unless somebody is extremely highly skilled in real estate contracts and knows the ins and outs of them, then it can be a very difficult proposition. The seller will also probably get a little bit concerned about what exactly is that buyer doing. Now, some sellers might be okay with it, so that one's a little bit of a tricky. It's going to depend on the actual seller. So, and to point 5, sellers won't take you seriously if you don't use an agent. Again, it's a mixed bag of nuts, probably leaning on the side that would be more of a fact versus a myth, okay? So the 6th thing is you don't pay for your agent anyway, the seller does. So working without an agent won't save you any money. Well, that's actually a fact. So here's the thing, in many, many cases across the country, whenever a agent becomes the listing agent for a person selling a property, the commission, let's call it, and let's just use a fictitious example of like 6%, okay? So with that 6% fictitious example, if that was the commission rate that the seller and the listing agent had agreed upon to work together, then the commission is normally split in half evenly, 3% to the listing agent and 3% to the buyer agent, okay? So if that's the case, you're getting free service that represent your best interests with a skilled and trusted real estate advisor, so you're not paying anything. Really, you're going to have buyer closing costs, but that's not the real estate commission. The real estate commission is being paid for by the seller. So again, in many parts of the country, in the vast majority of transactions, that is true. The only time that wouldn't be true is if the commission being offered by the seller is less than the broker that the agent works for, minimum amount. In such a case, she may be coming out of pocket a little bit to pay that real estate agent. Now, if you're working with a strong, trusted real estate advisor, you're generally going to save a lot more money than you could ever even hope to pay that agent. You could pay the agent 7 points, and in some cases, those agents will actually get you 7 or 10% under the list price, depending on the market and what's going on with that specific property. If that's the case, then they earned all, then they saved you a huge amount of money, right? So 2.6, you don't pay for your agent anyway, the seller does. So working without an agent won't save you any money. Again, that's a fact. Okay. So, point 7, you need an agent to be present for inspections and appraisals. Yes, again, that is a fact. Most buyer agents will represent you and be present for the home inspections and or home appraisals. So a lot of times what happens is a licensed agent is required in different parts of the country to actually be present for inspections or appraisals. And where it's not required for an agent to be present during the inspections or appraisals, a lot of good buyer agents will do it anyways, or at least offer to go for you if you're not going to be able to go there, so that they can have the conversation with a home inspector, get better insight into what's going on in the home, share the home inspection report with you as it's going to be done anyways, and recap with you anything that the home inspector took the time to point out directly to the real estate agent representing you, things that you might want to be extra cautious about, or things you definitely might want to ask for in repairs. Same thing with the home appraisal. Sometimes in different parts of the country, it's a requirement that the buyer agent be there. And if not, then at other times, the buyer agent might be there for you just to represent your best interest and see if there's anything they can do to assist the appraiser if the appraiser so desired. Now, real estate agents and appraisers anymore, with the current laws in place, don't really have much communication. So some appraisers don't like the agents there. So it's kind of a hit and miss. If the appraiser wants the agent there, then the agent will absolutely be there if they want them there. Okay, so the 8th point here is without an agent, you won't have buyer closing costs. That is a myth. Let me repeat that one. Some people think that if you don't work with a real estate agent, then you won't have any buyer closing costs. That is a huge, huge myth. Here's why. Buyer closing costs account for between 2% and 4% of a sales price, and it has nothing to do with the real estate commission. And it has everything to do with the city, local, and federal guidelines and the tax rates that you're going to be assessed, the real property transfer tax, the title insurance policy, lender title and policy, lender origination fees. They're going to have impound accounts, and you're going to have courier services. You're going to have notary fees. There's a whole bunch of different things that go into buyer closing costs. In general, let's say that buyer closing cost, if we're saying 2 to 4%, then let's just cut it in half or make it even it out at 3%. About 1.5 to 2% of those buyer closing costs are actually going back to you in the form of an impound account being set up with the loan officer. That doesn't mean that you're going to see that money again anytime soon. You'll see it again in the form of whenever you get ready to sell that property in the form of your equity. However, up front, they're going to put about 1.5 to 2% of those buyer closing costs into your impound account for the first 30 to 60 days of owning your new home. That's why oftentimes when you close on a home, you won't owe a mortgage for the first 1 to 2 months after you close, is because they took it from the buyer closing costs. So to point 8, without a real estate agent, you won't have buyer closing costs. Myth. You're going to have buyer closing costs whether you work with a real estate agent, whether you work with an attorney, or if you're just simply representing yourself. You're going to have that. So here's a few points that I would like to make before we get into how to buy without an agent, okay? The few points that I would like to make is that an agent's role, a buyer agent's role in representing you in a purchase is actually going to be upholding your best interest. We as trusted real estate advisors are going to have what's called fiduciary duties. And it makes us pretty interesting as real estate agents because normally the only other people that you really see fiduciary duties with is an attorney. So what is a fiduciary duty? In the case of real estate, there are 6 main components of our fiduciary duties, and they are to be obedient, loyal, to give you full disclosure, maintain your confidence, give you full accounting, and give you what's termed as reasonable skill and care. In short, if we were to take that and break it down, is it okay that a buyer agent represents your best interest and you're really not going to be paying for those services? Kind of a no-brainer if you're going to get the skill of a trusted real estate advisor and you're not even having to pay for their services to purchase your home. What you do want to do is make sure you pick the right kind of real estate agent by checking out their past performance, checking out their online ratings, and checking out their online reviews of what other real families just like you had to say about working with that trusted real estate advisor. The other benefits of a real estate agent is that they're going to bring to the table experience and negotiation prowess. Now, I've worked with some people that, I don't know, they think that they're the God's gift to real estate negotiations. I don't know. But how can you play the game of real estate negotiations unless you know what cards are on the table to be played? So the point being here, when it comes to negotiations, yes, there is a negotiation that technically takes place between the buyer and the seller with the representation of real estate agents. The more skilled and the more knowledgeable that real estate agent is, the better that they can advise you to the negotiations and assist you in getting the best deal and the best terms possible on the property that you wish to purchase. Also, having a trusted real estate advisor is going to give you the market insights that aren't available on sites like Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Redfin, or any of those other sites. It takes actually going through the process and being in the practice of doing it. They also know the contracts, the timelines, and how to handle all of the, make sure everything's in compliance and make sure that everything is being done correctly. So, I mean, that's a few different things to talk about right there. And then they can also anticipate problems. As a trusted real estate advisor here in Las Vegas, whenever I take a buying family out to go look at a home that they might want to purchase, I'm already sizing up the home and making notes. I always give a copy of the home's information and detail report to the clients that I'm representing, and I also have my own full data one that's an agent version of that property detail report. As we go through those homes, I'm taking notes of what they say they like and dislike. I'm also grading those homes on a 1 to 5 star rating scale that I've already shared with them prior to the first visit of a property, so we can keep the properties in perspective. The other thing that I'm doing, especially if they say that it's a 4 or above, in other words, a property that they would want to make an offer on, then what I'm looking at in specific are anything that can cause an issue in the home inspection or home appraisal. Then I'm sharing that information with them. If I see some things like water staining or something, I'm not a home inspector, but what I will do is point it out, and I will also make a specific note to the home inspector to take an extra close look at that and see if maybe that was just simply old staining, or if it was something that was more recent and if it had been repaired, so we can ask the seller about it. So anticipating problems are a big thing to keeping a deal together. on about a third of the time, all real estate transactions across the nation, about 1/3 of the time, seller's market, buyer's market, normal market will fall out of escrow for lack of anticipating problems and having honest, full disclosure of what's going on with the property. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things to consider and a lot of things that you're getting with a trusted real estate advisor. And then when you think about it at the end of the day, you're not paying for their services. I mean, there might be a broker transaction fee. Broker transaction fees normally range between like $350 to $1,000. But if that's all you're paying, really? No real estate commissions being paid by you, the buyer? Really? But you get all that knowledge and skill that's going to save you time, hassle, drama, and also help you get the best deal on your home as possible. Why wouldn't you go for it, right? So one of the points I'd like to make here is all of us work, right? And if I went into your job today and I told you how to do your job, how would that work for you? Would you be open to that? Would your clients be open to me doing your job if I have no experience in your field? Probably not, right? So think about that when you get ready to buy and sell a home. And the reason I'm making this video is because sometimes people think that it's better to work without a real estate agent, and what happens is they end up screwing themselves over really, really bad, and they have buyer's remorse, or they made a huge financial mistake because they were too proud, or they thought that they knew better, or something. I don't know what it is that people do. You know, all I can tell you is I have seen a lot of people really hurt themselves without working with a trusted real estate advisor and without checking a trusted real estate advisor's online reviews and ratings and past performance. Please don't let that be you. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how to buy a home without an agent. The first thing that you want to do if you're going to go ahead and buy a home without an agent, you want to start your search. And you want to start your search online by searching for the right home. There are plenty of online resources, you know, with Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com and such. Those would probably be the sites that you would turn to the most to find listing data that's available. The second thing that you'd want to do if you're not working with a real estate agent is to find an exceptional and good real estate attorney to work with. Talk to him or her before you start dealing with the paperwork so that you can start getting their services lined up, let them know what you're looking at, and staying on track so that you can quickly find the right home for you. The third thing that you want to do is meet with a local loan officer to go ahead and get a loan pre-approval. Please keep in mind that when you're getting a loan pre-approval letter, a lender is going to review 4 different things. They're going to review your income, your assets, your credit, and they're going to verify your employment situation. If they're not doing those 4 things, then you're not getting a loan pre-approval letter. Especially if you're not being represented by a real estate agent, make sure you have a bona fide loan pre-approval letter, and make sure that you're having a great conversation with that local loan officer so that let them know what you're doing, put them in touch with the attorney so the attorney and the loan officer can talk, okay? Now, the fourth thing is going out and viewing homes after you have your attorney lined up, after you have your loan pre-approval, so that you can go ahead and reassure the seller that when you submit your offer, that your finances are already ready to go, okay? So the fifth thing is to actually make and negotiate your offer directly with the seller. So you're not going to be working directly with the seller in many cases because there's going to be a listing agent in the vast majority of cases. So you're going to be submitting that to the listing agent. Now, the listing agent is probably going to be scrutinizing everything that you're doing because they want to make sure that everything is correct with the legal terms and with the legal contracts and being done correctly, so that whenever they go into escrow, if the seller chooses to accept your offer, then everything is okay. So just keep that in mind when you get ready to make and negotiate an offer. The sixth thing is that you'll need to set up your own home inspections, your own appraisal situations. You'll need to be setting all that up yourself. You'll need to be setting up any of the paperwork, appointments, anything that you need to do with the loan officer or attorney. You'll be needing to set up all of that stuff and schedule accordingly. And if you're working a full-time job, it may be a little bit difficult, but you need to keep those time hacks in place. Otherwise, you could be in breach of contract and lose a home and possibly lose your earnest money deposit at the same time. So please, if that's the case, then make sure that you schedule accordingly and plan accordingly ahead of time. The seventh point is simply closing the deal. Once you close the deal, then you're going to have a lot more paperwork to do at the title office. That's where your attorney really earns that fee that you're going to be paying them, and they're going to make sure that everything is reviewed, all the contracts and forms are together, and that you can sign, you'll probably be signing well over 100, 150 documents in many cases at the title signing. So make sure that you know what you're doing prior to closing. Again, I've made different points in here. We dispelled the myths and we supported the facts in this episode about buying without a real estate agent, myths versus facts. And we've also outlined the benefits of working with a real estate agent, and also have now outlined really briefly how to buy a home without an agent. Now it's your turn. Tell me what you took from this video. What was most impactful to you? Was it actually going through the myths versus facts section of this? Or was it how many benefits you get by actually working with a trusted real estate advisor? Or was it a little bit interesting to know that you're going to be all responsible 100% if you go on without an agent? And even if you're working with an attorney, you're going to need to be setting up your own home inspections, doing your own due diligence, and getting everything ready to go. Tell me what was the most surprising thing in this video to you, and what you took out of this video in the comment section below. Now, if you haven't already done so, I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. Number 1, please subscribe to this channel. Number 2, please like this video. And number 3, please share this video around with someone you know is going to be able to help. Now, lastly, I'm going to go ahead and pop up my contact information. If you want to drop me a line and say hello, or if you need help finding a top agent where you live, please let me know. I'm always here for you. And between now and next time, I'm wishing you and yours a lifetime full of love, wealth, abundance, and happiness. Thank you for watching today, team. Enjoy a wonderful day.